Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Garrison McDaniel, and we have a great show for you guys today. Of course, the Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals is going on currently, as the Edmonton Oilers currently hold a 2-0 lead on the Florida Panthers. That is going to be our fifth and final segment, talking about the live reaction that I have to that game, as it looks like the Oilers could be just 30 minutes away from forcing a Game 7 out of a 3-0, out of nothingness. Very impressive what the Edmonton Oilers are doing. We talked about momentum for the last week that the Oilers have had, and it truly is changing this entire series. But before we get into all of that, our first segment of the night, we'll be talking about the NHL Goalie Carousel and how many goaltenders can be on the move this offseason, who needs one, and as we had a couple of trades for goaltenders earlier in this week, we'll talk about how they affected the market a little bit. Our second segment, we'll be talking about, should Connor McDavid win the Conn Smythe even in a loss? And it doesn't seem likely now that the Oilers will lose this series, as, this is insane what they're doing. But if the Florida Panthers were able to come back, I think that is a fantastic conversation that we could have before Game 6 finishes. The third segment of the night, we'll be talking about just trade rumors for other players, position players that I've seen, and talk about where I can maybe see them ending up, what their difficulties are, and what they would warrant in a trade. And then the fourth segment, we'll be talking about the Panthers' line switches going into this Game 6, how they will affect the game, and if they will help the Florida Panthers. Of course, I did write that segment before this game started, so I've seen it be true and false at the same time, what I will be talking about. But before we get into all that, as always, if you would like to become a bigger part of the show, help out the GSMC Sports Network in more ways than you guys already do, use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net. It does help all of the creators here out at the GSMC Sports Network. It is much appreciated. And you can ask me a question that will show up across the screen as well. Use the gsmcpodcast.net tips and donations link for that. With that being said, we're going to get right into our first segment of the night, talking about the NHL Goalie Carousel is what I'm calling it, because it seems like there are going to be a lot of guys that move around. Of course, earlier this week, we saw Jacob Markstrom. We already talked about that. And we saw Darcy Kemper, who was the return for the Pierre-Luc Dubois in Washington. Let's see. Jacob Markstrom is a top, I want to say around top 10, maybe on the back end of that, or maybe, in the 10 to 15 range in goaltenders in the NHL, probably. He has his time, and he can definitely have moments. He could be a very great goaltender in the NHL also. But for what we saw for his return was a first, and we saw a young defenseman who kind of looks like he will top out at a top 4 D-man, maybe a top 6 on a playoff contending roster. So that kind of sets the market, right? We know who was better than Jacob Markstrom, and we know who is worse than Jacob Markstrom. We saw Darcy Kemper warrant a Pierre-Luc Dubois in return, although that is, you're looking at Pierre-Luc Dubois as the worst contract in the NHL, possibly. It's definitely a top 5 worst contract in the NHL, getting paid over $8 million he only produced 40 points last season in 82 games played. He was also a minus 20 as well, so we're seeing the returns that these trade pieces or these goalies warrant, and it does beg the question for the goaltenders that we know will be on the move this season. We know the Bruins are going to decide to go with Jeremy Swayman. So that means Linus Ullmark will be on the move this offseason. They want to get something back for Linus Ullmark, and they don't need this. Linus Ullmark is way too good of a backup goaltender in the NHL, basically. So for the Boston Bruins, what feasibly can they get in return? Well, I would say Linus Ullmark is better than Jacob Markstrom. So he would get a bigger return. But what does that look like? Is that a first this year? I don't know. A future first has so much, it's just so much different weight in the NHL nowadays than a current first is, because we see the prospects, we kind of, we've gone through the motions, we know that these are the ones that would affect teams sooner than later, right, and the teams just don't know what they're getting in future drafts. So a current first means a lot more. So for Jacob Markstrom to get a future first, a 2025 first, that does, it's also a New Jersey Devils first, which with Jacob Markstrom, that should be in the 20s, hopefully, for the New Jersey Devils. So I don't think that it's a first this year. Linus Ullmark is a fantastic goaltender, but maybe not a first this year. Okay, then that asks the questions, are they looking for prospects, the Bruins? Probably not. They're probably looking for an established winger, an established defenseman maybe, that could play in their top 4 or top 6. Who is that? That's the next question. Well, we'll talk about the forwards that are being toted around right now by these teams, but I know Cam Atkinson by the Flyers is one that maybe you would look at if you're the Bruins. That is a former 40 goal scorer in the NHL. The guy can score 20 in the season, pretty guaranteed. He is 35. He has 1 year left on a $5.88 million contract. So we'll talk about Cam Atkinson more in this in the third segment of the night. But that could be an interesting one. Or if they're going for the picks route, but it's the Boston Bruins, so they usually don't like to get too many picks in drafts. I would say it would be a current second with a future second, or a future first with a current third or fourth. I think that could get you Linus Ullmark, or if you want to add in a piece, that could kind of eliminate the future first or future second if you do choose to trade away your current second. The thing is that teams know that the Bruins want to move on from Linus Ullmark. So it's interesting. Some teams that I know could definitely go for a Linus Ullmark are some teams that could go for a Linus Ullmark are the Ottawa Senators, who are rocking Joonas Korpisalo right now. Maybe a Colorado Avalanche, who has Alexander Georgiev. Maybe a Vegas Golden Knights, if they don't believe in Adin Hill anymore, because he did have not that great of a season. Maybe a Utah team who, they really don't have a goaltender right now. Or Minnesota Wild, potentially, but I don't think that they're really in win now mode. Probably not. Maybe a Columbus Blue Jackets if they want to move on from Elvis Merzlikins. Maybe, I don't know anybody else off the top of my head. Maybe a Toronto Maple Leafs if they don't believe in Ilya Samsonov anymore. But they do have Joe Wall, who could also be on up. So these are the teams that are kind of looking for goaltenders. I know Ottawa will definitely go out and get a goaltender. They did not enjoy how Joonas Korpisalo played. He was statistically the worst starting goaltender in the NHL this past season. So they definitely want to move on. Maybe the Blue Jackets want to move on with how awful Elvis is playing with his $5.7 million contract. That's looking like one of the worst contracts that the NHL has right now. You also have maybe... I know Stuart Skinner is playing some fantastic hockey right now, but I don't think that that's really the way that the Oilers want to go, and I think that they will move on from Jack Campbell, which is a buyout candidate. I'm not even going to talk about Jack Campbell as a trade piece because I don't think that I think he'll go to free agency if anything. Nobody's taking on that contract. So other guys that could also go, you also are looking at a UC Soros from Nashville. He could definitely be on the move as the Predators kind of start a rebuilding process. They were the 8th team in the West this season. They got absolutely trounced by... Well, they didn't actually get trounced. They lost in 6 to the Canucks and kind of kept it close in that series. But you also have Philip Gustafsson, Elvis Merzlikins, Joe Wall. You have Alexander Georgiev, who could also be on the move. But the teams that seem like they really want a goaltender, this is according to Tyler Yaremchuk, it is the Toronto Maple Leafs, Ottawa Senators, Colorado Avalanche, and then you also have the Columbus Blue Jackets, who could be on the look for a goaltender. So those 4 teams look like they'll be in the market, and there is a lot of goaltenders who can be used by these teams. It'll be interesting to see the return. Another big point of topic here is nobody's going to take on Elvis Merzlikins' contract. So how much are the Blue Jackets really willing to give up in a goaltending, because they also have Daniil Tarasov, who is a young goaltender, 24 years old, who's playing really well. You have Jet Greaves, who just kind of carried the Monsters to the AHL Calder Cup semifinals. He had like the best goals against average in the AHL in the playoffs. So you have a bunch of young names who can be NHL ready, and then you have Elvis Merzlikins. So only one of these guys can be the backup, and I guarantee you they don't want Elvis to be a backup goaltender. So what does that look like for him? Well, I could see him hitting the waiver wire here soon. I don't think a team will claim him. Is he a buyout candidate? I don't know. Do the Jackets have to give up like a 5th round pick for somebody to take on his contract? That could also be an interesting twist as well. So the Blue Jackets are one of the more interesting teams in the goalie carousel, is what I'm calling it. You have a team that has a lot of pieces, and Don Waddell has made it clear ever since he started this, or since he took over the general management role in Columbus, he's made it clear that he wants to win sooner than later. He said that the Blue Jackets have the pieces, but you're going to see 6 new names in the lineup. What that looks like is still to time will tell. You could imagine that a David Jiricek is ready. You could imagine that maybe a Gavin Brindley is ready for NHL hockey. Of course, you're also relying on guys like Kent Johnson, David Jiricek, or I already said David Jiricek. You're relying on guys like Kent Johnson, Adam Fantilli, Cole Sillinger, Kirill Marchenko to take this next step. So for the Blue Jackets, they're really looking for a goaltender, and you could kind of say the same thing with the Ottawa Senators. Of course, Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, these young pieces that the Ottawa Senators are looking to build around. You also have on the blue line Josh Norris, who is a fantastic defenseman. I believe they have Jacob Chicherin still for next season, who is a fantastic piece for them. So they feel like they're a goaltender away. They feel like they're in a very similar spot to the Devils. This season, they very much underperformed with a great team. And they're ready to turn it around because of poor goaltending is why they underperformed. That's what they believe. So, and I can understand that from the Ottawa Senators' perspective. You had Claude Giroux playing well. You had Brady Tkachuk playing well. You have Tim Stützle playing well. You have your defense playing well. You go out and get Chicherin from the Arizona Coyotes in a blockbuster trade. He started playing well. And then you're just giving up a lot of goals because you have Jonas Korpisalo, who was kind of a sieve in the net this past season. So the Ottawa Senators are definitely frustrated with their goaltending situation. And then the Toronto Maple Leafs, man, they haven't been able to figure out goaltender for as long as I've been alive. I swear, their last goaltender that worked out was the polar bear. In the 90s. I mean, or not the polar bear, the dog. I don't know why his name is escaping me, the Toronto Maple Leafs goalie. But I'll definitely figure that out during my break, and then I'll get it for the second segment. But that's annoying me. It's escaping my mind. But for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they feel like they have a core. They're the Dallas Cowboys of the NHL. I say it so often. You have, or what's it? Sorry, that's all my brain. You have for the Toronto Maple Leafs the core that can get it done. The core 4. We talk about it so often. Tavares, Matthews, Marner, Nylander. These guys are superstars in the NHL, and they just feel like the back end lets them down time and time again. What do they need to do? They need to go out and get a goaltender this offseason if they are really serious about competing in the East next year, because the East is only getting better, and they're only going to get worse with Tavares aging and with some contracts coming up here soon. So that'll wrap it up for our NHL Goalie Carousel talk. In the third segment, if you like trade talks and trade rumors, we're going to be talking more on trade rumors in that third segment, but that'll take us into our first break of the night and second segment. Can McDavid win the Conn Smythe even in a loss?
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, we are back on the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I told you guys I would look up that name. It's Curtis Joseph. That was the goaltender's name that was escaping me from the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played in the early 2000s. I was also thinking of a Felix Potvin who was playing in the 90s for the Maple Leafs. So a couple names escaping my mind, but I got there eventually. But the Oilers still up 2-0 on the Florida Panthers. Of course, I'll be keeping an eye on that game throughout the entire podcast as the second period is coming to an end with 7 minutes left in that one. As for this segment, we are kind of talking about the Stanley Cup Finals, and it's Connor McDavid. Maybe we don't need to even have this conversation because are they going to lose at this point? I mean, this is... I'll talk about this in the fifth segment, but I honestly think that this could be the best sports story of all time. But that is for the fifth segment, talking more on this Game 6. For this one, Connor McDavid has 42 points in 23 postseason games. 42 points in 23 postseason games. He has 8 goals, 34 assists. He has over an assist per game. This guy, man, what can he do on the ice? Connor McDavid is so special. Is he special enough to win a Conn Smythe even in a loss, though? Well, he's the favorite right now to win a Conn Smythe. He's minus 220 entering Game 6. If the Panthers won today, even if the Panthers won, the favorite was for McDavid to win the Conn Smythe. You needed a remarkable performance from Sergei Bobrovsky, maybe a shutout for this one. You needed maybe a Matthew Tkachuk or Alexander Barkov, probably more Alexander Barkov to get a hat trick or 4 points in this one. Not looking like any of that's going to happen. It's 2-0 to the Oilers right now with a little bit more left to play in this game. What more can you say about Connor McDavid? This guy is taking this team, putting them on the shoulders, and dragging... Like he said, drag that other team back to Alberta. That's exactly what he did. He fulfilled on that promise. Now they're playing in Alberta, and he knew that they didn't want to. They knew they wanted to close that out in Game 5, and I think the Panthers needed to close that out in that Game 5, because looking at this Game 6, here's the thing. You gave the Oilers momentum through that Game 4, 8-1, through that Game 5, 5-3, and then they're going back home. So any momentum that was maybe lost in the second half of that Game 4, that maybe we saw, of course, the Oilers jumping out to a quick 3-0 lead, then the Panthers coming back, making it a 4-3 game in that game. It seemed like the Oilers lost some of that mojo, some of that momentum. Now, going back home, now they got it all back. Having that crowd behind them, now you got it back, and now you're going to be able to take this, this dope that they have from this Game 6 back to Sunrise, Florida in a Game 7 and crush the Florida. Like, if the this is, we'll talk about this more in the fifth segment, but Panthers lost last year, and to lose in this fashion, I can't even imagine. But talking about Connor McDavid, this is the first time since the 90s that a player has had over 40 points in a postseason. What? We talk about the 90s like everybody was scoring at will because goaltenders couldn't save anything. At least that's how I talk about the 90s because that's just true. Watch the goaltending performance from the 90s. You'll know what I'm talking about. I really trash on it so often, but it's fair. There's a reason that Gretzky had 215 points in a season. He was that great, but if he played in today's NHL, he would more look like Connor McDavid, which is still fantastic, still very skilled, still the greatest hockey player of all time, bar none. He would not be putting up 215 points in a season. That's just what I'll say. But as far as McDavid, 42 points in 23 postseason games. I told myself I was going to do the math over an 82-game regular season, but now I have to do it on the fly here. That would be 150 points. 150 points. That would be in the top 10 all-time in regular season points. That would be... Where would that be, actually, in regular season points? That would be right behind his last year tally in the regular season. And that's also in the regular season, which is a little bit easier to score in. He's doing this in the playoffs where you're going up against the best goaltenders night in, night out. You're getting everybody's best night in, night out. This Connor McDavid guy, he's special. Minus 220 to win the Conn Smythe right now. It probably has skyrocketed at this point. He might have won it. He hasn't even put up a point in this game 6. I was talking about this series and talking about Connor McDavid. Like, he needed to break that record for them to win. He might not have to. The Oilers just are playing some fantastic hockey. He's on an 150-point pace in a postseason. What are... he is good. Yeah, I mean, just talking about the things that he's been doing, it's been... Well, you guys saw that. First off, his goal against the Florida Panthers, I've still rewatched it in that Game 5, his goal against Bobrovsky, the one that was actually on a goaltender. Of course, he scored 2, the second being on an empty net. But the first one was he just slid it along the ice and it confused everybody because it just seemed like the easiest goal. But, I mean, you're expecting him to shoot top shelf there. You're expecting him to do something crazy. He just slides it along the ice, goes 5-hole on Bobrovsky. Nothing, something slight, just easy. And then later, for the next goal, he, dekes around every single defender that the Florida Panthers can throw at him, gets across crease. I saw a screenshot of this goal. It was literally a box of 4 Panthers around him, and there wasn't an Oiler in sight. You couldn't see Corey Perry from a screenshot of this play. He goes through all of them to deliver a perfect pass to Corey Perry right in time to get past Sergei Bobrovsky. This Connor McDavid guy is something special. And this is on the backs of a Dallas Stars series where he was special, a Vancouver Canucks series where he was special, an LA Kings series where he was special. There was a point in this postseason that we were talking about Draisaitl performing a little bit better. Draisaitl had more points at one point in this postseason, but in the nitty-gritty, when it gets down to it, it's been Connor McDavid not just performing but surpassing. My expectations for this guy is out of the world. It's expectations that nobody should be able to live up to. I expect him to go out there and do something insane every time I watch him. He does. He lives up to the expectations. That's what makes him different than any other athlete that I have watched in my life, barring the greatest of all time for their sports, has not been able to do that. The only athletes that I can think of off the top of my head in my entire lifetime that has been able to do what Connor McDavid does, kind of perform no matter when I'm watching him, Lionel Messi when he was playing for FC Barcelona in the early 2010s. Not even lately. Lionel Messi isn't able to, just turn it on at the flip of his switch anymore. Of course, he is 36 years old by now. Makes sense. But there was a very long point where it was just Lionel Messi will take over a game and you face him and there is fear in you. LeBron James in 2015 through 2018. Not even Heat LeBron James. And I wasn't old enough to watch original Cavs LeBron. But from 15 to 18, LeBron James. 2000 to 2009, Tiger Woods. That might be it. It begs the question, is Connor McDavid the greatest athlete in a sport right now? Let's think about the comparisons here. You got Patrick Mahomes, which is fair, and I'll leave that one to the side. You have Nikola Jokic is the best basketball player in the world right now. I think that is understandable to say. Connor McDavid is a better player than Nikola Jokic is for their sport. Best baseball player right now. I mean, baseball is really hard, but I mean, who do I want to give it to? Probably a Shohei Ohtani, maybe a Aaron Judge. Yeah, sure. Let's say Aaron Judge is the best baseball player right now. Connor McDavid is by far a better athlete in this sport than Aaron Judge is in his. Okay, golf, Scotty Scheffler. I don't think he's at that level. Tennis, it's Carlos Alcaraz. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. I don't think that he's at that level of Connor McDavid. So we're talking about Patrick Mahomes here, and maybe that's comparable. Patrick Mahomes does some nutty stuff, but I just don't think that Patrick Mahomes is at the level that Connor McDavid is in his sport. Connor McDavid is the greatest athlete in their sport currently, and we're watching him in a playoff run where he is completely putting his Oilers team on his back. 4 points in the last 2 games, winning both games essentially for the Edmonton Oilers. So impressive. Can McDavid win the Conn Smythe even in a loss? Absolutely. First off, he's the favorite. So first off, the Vegas betting odds have already kind of tipped their hand in that. But it doesn't even matter with the betting odds. You could just see with your eyes, this guy is the best. The Conn Smythe goes out to the playoff MVP. Connor McDavid is the most valuable player in the playoffs. He is the best player in these playoffs. He is the most important player in these playoffs, and he has had the most success in these playoffs by far. And of course, if they lose, he still wouldn't want the Conn Smythe, like truly. And I understand that he wouldn't even be looking for the Conn Smythe in a loss, but it's still his, right? He earned it. So that answers that question. Can McDavid win the Conn Smythe even in a loss? Absolutely, he deserves it. He's the best athlete in the world in their sport right now. I truly do believe so. So that'll wrap it up for our second segment of the night. When I come back from my second break of the night, we'll be talking about the NHL trade rumor roundup, some names that are on the block early in this NHL offseason before it even starts.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Of course, Game 6 update for you guys. The Oilers have scored for a third time. It is a 3-0 game lead as the Florida Panthers are looking to choke away a 3-0 series lead alongside that. Ooh, that game is fun. That game is getting interesting, and the Oilers and Rogers Center is this is such a fun environment. I'm loving it. I talked to you guys about how exciting the Rogers Center was when they played Vancouver in the second round. We're in the Stanley Cup Finals now, and it's unlike anything that I've seen. Truly, the environment in that building is so much fun. But 3-0 for the Edmonton Oilers. Don't call it a comeback. Don't call it a comeback. All right, getting into this third segment of the night, NHL trade rumor roundup. All right, the first name I have to talk about is Pavel Buchnevich. His future with the St. Louis Blues was the subject of speculation, according to the Hockey News is where I'm getting my rumor source here. Pavel Buchnevich's future with the St. Louis Blues had a lot of speculation during the NHL trade deadline in March. He is 29 years old. The winger has a year left on his contract with a cap hit of $5.8 million. I believe that is a year left after this offseason, so he would still be under contract through this offseason, basically. In April, Lou Korak reported that Blues general manager Doug Armstrong was interested in signing Buchnevich to a contract extension. Armstrong could offer the winger a 6 to 8 year deal with an average annual value between $7 million and $8 million. And then on Monday, Armstrong said that the talks with Buchnevich's camp were really good. He also acknowledged the winger would be 30 when the contract began. So that's the interesting part of all this. You have Pavel Buchnevich, who the Blues clearly want to keep on board. However, you're going to give him around a $7 to $8 million per year deal, which would be on line of like a JT Miller, a Mark Scheifele of the Winnipeg Jets kind of deal for 6 to 8 years for a 30-year-old winger. I would be worried. I feel like that contract can only bite you in the butt coming, in the future years here. So I'd be worried for the Blues. But of course, this is the biggest name that was really on the trade debt block come in March. He never got dealt, and now we're coming into this offseason where he definitely is the talk of the town for a lot of teams that are looking for. Pavel Buchnevich is a perfect winger for a lot of teams. Can slot right on that first line, maybe even second line for a bunch of these teams. Definitely a guy that a Bruins could definitely use. A guy that maybe a Devils could definitely use. Maybe a Ottawa Senators could use. Some team like that who we talk about all these teams that are on the verge, and I've kind of narrowed it out between verge going into rebuilding and verge going into winning. I think the Devils and the Senators are perfect teams on the verge going into winning, and teams like the Penguins, I consider the Capitals, although that move for the Pierre-Luc Dubois was questionable at best in my mind. The Penguins, the Capitals kind of moving in the direction towards rebuilding. And the Predators, I think, are moving towards rebuilding as well. So for these teams, it is, it's interesting to see what they do in this offseason. If, my speculation and where I think that these teams are at stays true, and if they do try to move in the direction that I expect them to. The Devils have already shown clearly that they're moving into win-now mode. Jacob Markstrom coming for a future first is a clear win-now move decision. I just am looking for the Senators to make theirs. The Blue Jackets are another team that could make theirs. The Flyers could make theirs anytime now. And, a bunch of these teams. The Jets could be an interesting team to look out for this offseason as well. But for the Blues, Pavel Buchnevich could resign for them, or if he doesn't, I could definitely see him moving in this free agency. So I would look out for that name, see if he does sign a contract extension, because I think that the Blues have made it clear that if he doesn't want to stay, then he needs to go sooner than later so that they can get the maximum out of him. Another guy that was was a big topic of conversation during the trade deadline was Logan Couture. The San Jose Sharks captain, they are going through a rebuilding phase, and this is why a lot of people expected him to move. He does not fit with the San Jose Sharks timeline whatsoever. He is 35 years old. He is a center for the San Jose Sharks that could still be be a provider for a playoff team and be a very good second or third line center on a playoff team. So we did expect the Sharks to kind of move on from him, look in other directions. Of course, he was injured this season, so that might have saved his tenure in San Jose a little bit longer. But we expect him to move in this offseason. But apparently, during Ryan Warzowski's introductory press conference, the San Jose Sharks general manager Mike Greer kind of dismissed these talks and said that is absolutely false in a response to a question about Logan Couture and him moving. He also praised Logan Couture's leadership, says he's still a heck of a hockey player, so you guys can put any of those thoughts about me looking to trade our captain, you can put it to bed. Clearly dismissing this. So Logan Couture won't be on the move. That was a huge name during the trade deadline, and I expected him to be a huge name during this offseason. I didn't think that he would be on the San Jose Sharks. It makes so much sense. I just went through why it makes so much sense. But they say they don't want to move him, and it makes sense. It makes sense and it doesn't make sense at the same time. You have a 35-year-old on a team that's full of a bunch of 20-something-year-olds who are trying to rebuild, trying to grow for the future. He will be long gone from the San Jose Sharks before they win a Stanley Cup, but before they even make the playoffs, they are very far away. They have Will Smith coming up. They have Macklin Celebrini in this draft class that will go to them. They've already tipped their hat on that. I forget the exact how exactly they did it, but they pretty much all but announced that Macklin Celebrini is a San Jose Shark already. Of course, they have the number 1 overall pick. No real point to not say it, I guess. Everybody knows Macklin Celebrini is going number 1 in this draft too. So, but for the San Jose Sharks, not moving Logan Couture does make sense a little bit. He is your captain. You are looking to develop a bunch of young players. Who is a better player for Logan or for Will Smith to look up to, or for Macklin Celebrini to look up to than a Logan Couture? Both of these guys are, I would say, more undersized when it comes to the center position. Both of them are pretty. I think Macklin is like 5'11". Will Smith is around that. And Logan Couture is right up that. I usually like centers to be around 6'2", because they have to play that defensive style so much. But we've definitely seen a resurgence of centers being smaller, kind of more winger built, and it still works. They can definitely do it. I mean, Alexander Barkov gets by, and he's not too much taller than the rest of them. So for a San Jose Sharks team, Logan Couture could be a perfect guy for these young guys to look after, and to mentor these young guys. So be interesting to see what the San Jose Sharks do for the rest of their offseason, what direction they're really going in, or if it's going to be another year of bad, right? No other way to put that. They didn't really tank, but they weren't good this past year. And I mean, everybody knows that. Another name that I already mentioned earlier in this podcast in the first segment, but in case you guys did miss it, Cam Atkinson from the Philadelphia Flyers. I think that the Flyers have already tipped their cap a little bit on him definitely moving. Flyers general manager Daniel Beer said his club was considering its options with Atkinson and Cal Peterson, the goaltender, including buying out their contracts. Cam Atkinson makes $5.88 million a year. It's not a good contract, but he definitely can provide on a playoff team. And I think that he could be an interesting name coming this off season. If they do buy him out, I think there will be a lot of teams looking to make a bid on him in free agency. He's still a heck of a hockey player. Can still score like the rest of them. I think he had 20-something goals this past season, so. Or was he injured this season? I think he was injured. But the season prior, he had a very good season. The first one under Torts, I believe. So, for Cam Atkinson, there was talks about him going to the San Jose Sharks, but he has a 10-team no-trade clause, and I believe, this is speculation, of course, I believe that the Sharks, it makes sense that the Sharks would be a name on that 10-team no-trade clause, because it seemed like Cam Atkinson kind of vetoed it. Darren Dreger reported they had an interest in Cam Atkinson. Speaking of the Sharks, the 35-year-old Philadelphia Flyers winger is not keen about going to San Jose. Atkinson has a year. So it would make sense for them to not be, or to be on his no trade clause. That could definitely be the reason he didn't go there. But he is a very skilled winger. A lot of guys kind of in this mold are going to be moving around this offseason. Bunch of 35-something-year-olds that have proved to be successful at the NHL level that could help out a playoff team making a push next season. So interested to see where Atkinson goes. Might be one of the first dominoes to fall in this offseason that, honestly, I'm expecting this offseason to be all over the place. A lot of trades, a lot of free agency acquisitions, as a lot of teams are in that middle ground that I talked about. A lot of teams trying to figure out their direction of their franchise right now. So I can't wait to see where all of these players go. Of course, these are all just rumors right now. So nothing set in stone, but these are the rumors that I'm reading and I'm hearing about. I thought I'd share them with you guys. I think it is important to keep up with this so we aren't too surprised when things happen. And I can talk about it more, proactive than reactive in the time, so to speak. So we're going to go into our fourth segment of the night off the back of that. The Panthers made a few line changes for Game 6. I was going to talk about whether or not they would work. I think we're seeing the proof is in the pudding here that they might have not. But we will still talk about the line changes and what Paul Maurice, the head coach of the Florida Panthers, was going for with his Game 6 lines.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We have no more updates from Game 6, as I was just watching the Zach Hyman third goal, because I did miss that from being, of course, here. That was a fantastic goal. We'll talk all about the goals going into this, going into our next segment and reacting to the game that's going on right now. But for this segment, for the Panthers line changes for Game 6, they elected to go, let me make sure I get this right. They elected to take Kyle Okposo off of the lineup sheet, and they went for Nick Cousins on the right wing of the fourth line. Of course, this is the fourth line, so it doesn't affect the game too much. But you can kind of see what Paul Maurice is going for. They're trying to match the speed of the Edmonton Oilers, and they're kind of getting desperate to do so. Kyle Okposo, of course, being a little bit older, a little bit slower on the wing. Here they elect to go with Nick Cousins, who is a fast winger, to flank Kevin Stenlund, with Ryan Lundberg on the left side, who is a very fast winger in his own right. So you can see what Paul Maurice is doing here. He's worried about the Oilers running them out of Alberta, and that's kind of what they're doing right now. Still, the Oilers have some magic, something. McDavid hasn't scored a point in this game, by the way. McDavid doesn't need to. They're up 3-0. This is lovely for the Edmonton Oilers. This is horrible for the Florida Panthers. But as far as these lines go, they also make another change. They switched Evan Rodriguez and Carter Verhaeghe. Of course, these are the lines that they kind of went with. Their top 9 is the lines that they've gone with for most of this season. Verhaeghe, Barkov, Reinhart, Rodriguez, Bennett, Tkachuk, Luostarinen, Lindell, Tarasenko has been kind of their top 9 for a lot of this season. So they played Evan Rodriguez on the first line after he had a pretty great first 3 games of this series, and ever since they made that switch, it's been kind of all downhill. So they switched it back, put Carter Verhaeghe back on that first line with Barkov and Sam Reinhart. Does make a lot of sense for them to do so. That has not worked out. The Florida Panthers, man. We were talking about this series on Wednesday, and I was asked the question, what happened here? Is this really the switch that we saw for the Edmonton Oilers? And that got me thinking, and this portrays to the lines here. The Edmonton Oilers have played so well the entire 6 games. Sergei Bobrovsky was fantastic in Game 1. Sergei Bobrovsky was fantastic in Game 2. And then in Game 3, the Edmonton Oilers got really close after Sergei Bobrovsky was fantastic in the first 2 periods of that game. So, what is this a switch? Is this a law of equality? Things always, go back to average no matter what. If a hitter goes on a 10-game hot streak in baseball, he's going to eventually have a 10-game cold streak where he gets his average back to a 2. If a guy bats 270 every year and then suddenly he starts the year, he's up like to a 507 batting average, the batting average is going to come down, I promise you that. That might be what we're seeing with this series. You had so many great chances for the Edmonton Oilers where they missed, and the Florida Panthers just took their chances and ran with them in the first 3 games. And then in these last few games, it's been the opposite, right? It's been and the Florida Panthers really haven't had chances in the last few games, but the Edmonton Oilers have been capitalizing on their chances. And Stuart Skinner is becoming a way better goaltender too. So I think it's just law of averages. Everything ends up right where it should be. And I think that's what we're seeing here. But in terms of these lines, I think this is Paul Maurice just acknowledging. Here's the thing, is if you run the same lines that you have had for the last few games out there, just the same here, you're kind of telling the team, nothing's wrong. You just lost 2 games in a row. We're fine. Nothing's wrong. Win, right? Go out there, play your hockey, play the same style. But if you change the lines, hey, this is bad. We can't keep doing this. We cannot let them win this game. This is bad. Things are getting bad. We need to change it up. And I think that's what they did. And I think that's what Paul Maurice did. I think that was the message he was trying to send. Kyle Okposo, of course, is a fantastic player and a guy that can definitely turn provider in a Game 6. Played a long time in Buffalo, not playing in the playoffs, however, being a great player for that team that was disappointing for so many years. And now he's on the Panthers and still a fantastic player. Has never not been a fantastic player in his career is what I'm getting at. But you're going to need to make somebody a scapegoat, I guess would be the term I would use here. And I think you're just making Kyle Okposo that guy just in reaction. Like, you can't just say everything's fine, right? You need to light a fire under these guys here. You need to start moving some pieces to change some things up, to get things to go differently. And I think that's exactly what Paul Maurice is trying to do. I think that's exactly what we're seeing here. And whether or not it'll work is yet to be seen. Of course, so far it hasn't. The Oilers, I just think, are on a different level right now. They're playing so fantastically. And I think they've killed off I know they've killed off all of the Panthers power plays, but I want to know how many Panthers power plays there are as the second intermission is coming to an end right now. But for the Florida Panthers, they have had, it won't show me, it will it, of course. I will let you know when I find out. There it is. The Florida Panthers have had 2 power plays. Oilers have been able to kill them off. Both of them off. They've only let up 1 power play goal in like 49 or 50 attempts against in these playoffs, or of their last 49 or 50 attempts. Of course, they let on. I think they've let up only 2 the entire playoff still, which is so impressive. The Edmonton Oilers penalty kill and their special teams unit have really been something special in these playoffs, and we're really seeing it firsthand at how much of a difference that can be for a team. But for these Panthers lines, as we were talking about it, they keep with the same defensive pairing. It's been working. Their defense has been working. I don't believe they changed up anything on their power play. Yeah, they didn't change up anything on their power play. I think those 2 units have been what we've been seeing these first 5 games. Reinhart, Barkov, Verhaeghe, OEL, Kachuk is that first unit. Second unit is Bennett, Lundell, Tarasenko, Montour, and Rodriguez, which that has definitely been it. And their penalty kill has been the same as well. And they, of course, they have gone with Bobrovsky as the starter for every single game, which is warranted and makes sense. So for the Florida Panthers, look at change up. It didn't work. Now begs the question, what are they going to do in the Game 7? Are there going to be more shakeups? I mean, you can't run out. There's going to need to be a lot said in that locker room in Florida after this Game 6. That Game 7 is going to be one of the best games ever played. It's going to be Monday. I'm going to be on the podcast for it, so that's going to be a special one to keep your eyes out for. But with that being said, we are going to wrap up our 4th segment of the night here talking about the Panthers line changes for Game 6. Next up on the docket for this 5th and final segment of the night, 5th and final segment, or 25th and final segment of the week, is live reaction to the Oilers-Panthers Game 6 as I take my 4th and final break of this GSMC Hockey Podcast. Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We have our fifth and final segment of the night. Live reaction to the Oilers-Panthers Game 6. All right, let's talk about this Game 6 here. Warren Foegele is the first name we're talking about. This guy, first off, has been a fantastic Oiler for a very long time. Coming out of nowhere. He was on the fourth line to start this series, if I'm not mistaken. He has scored 3 Stanley Cup Finals goals. His first 3 of the entire playoffs have come in this finals as he scores his 3rd goal in the first period of this game. It was a fantastic pass from Leon Draisaitl that found Warren Foegele on the backside. That happens with about 12 and a half minutes left to play in the first period. And the Oilers outshot the Florida Panthers 11-2 in that first period. Clearly, the Oilers are on the front foot. Clearly, they're playing the better hockey, right? This is going to be a blowout game. This is going to be dominant. Well, it is. But the Florida Panthers came back in this second period, and they outshot the Edmonton Oilers 11-4. You want to know who scored the 2 goals in that period? The Edmonton Oilers did. How? They got outshot 11-4. For the Oilers, half their shots in that period went into the net. It's a goal from Adam Henrique, from Matthias Janmark and Matthias Ekholm, the 2 Matthias combined for the assists here. And Adam Henrique gets a cross-crease goal. This is his 3rd goal of the Stanley Cup Finals, Adam Henrique? Maybe 2nd. I know he scored more than 1. This was a trade deadline acquisition for the Edmonton Oilers. Fantastic pickup for them. Has been very clutch. And as I'm speaking about all of this, the Florida Panthers from Alexander Barkov get a goal. It is 3-1. The Panthers score on their first shot in the 3rd period. 3-1 in this hockey game. Alexander Barkov gets the goal, his 8th of this postseason, to bring the Panthers within a fighter's chance of this game here. Adam Henrique and Zach Hyman were the ones that scored. Adam Henrique with a cross-crease goal that was assisted by Matthias Janmark was very impressive. You also have Zach Hyman that scored his goal that was assisted by Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Very, very impressive as well. That Ryan Nugent-Hopkins goal, it was like a block shot, that Zach Hyman goal, it was a block shot that hit hit off of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and then Zach Hyman gets the breakaway on the other side and goes forehand. He goes forehand, backhand to beat Bobrovsky. Left Bobrovsky just laying there on the ice. Zach Hyman, very impressive, but Alexander Barkov from the assists have come in. It's Carter Verhaeghe with the lone assist on this one. That might be a switch that could end up going in the Panthers' favor. We talked about it in the 4th segment of the night, how that could be a very interesting look that the Florida Panthers gave to get Carter Verhaeghe back on that first line. Of course, he is a sniper style of a forward. Alexander Barkov gets that goal. I haven't seen how that goal did go in, so I can't talk too much more of it. But it leaves the Florida Panthers with some time in this game here. It's a 2-goal difference with 17 minutes left. The Panthers can definitely score in droves. They've proved that throughout this entire postseason. But since that Florida Panthers goal went in, it seems like all of the momentum is on the Edmonton Oilers side, as they have gotten the last 2 shots on net for the Edmonton Oilers. I'll go to the play-by-play now. It's Ryan McLeod with 2 shots in rapid succession that were saved by Sergei Bobrovsky. But Alexander Barkov making this game a little bit more interesting than what it was looking like. Of course, you also have for the Edmonton Oilers, the entire team is really playing well. It's Dylan Holloway on a +2. It's Evan Bouchard and Matthias Ekholm on +2s as well. Evan Bouchard already set the record for... did he? No, it was Darnell Nurse that set the other side of the record. Oh, I don't want to talk about that. But Connor McDavid +1 in this game, 2 shots on goal, no points yet in this one. He's already locked up the Conn Smythe, so he doesn't need to. But he is 5 points away from Gretzky's record. Of course, we've talked about it. What have I noticed in this matchup? Well, the Edmonton Oilers have been just able to capitalize on their chances way better than the Florida Panthers have in this game, and in the last few games really, but in this game especially, the Oilers are the Oilers are scoring goals the way they need to score goals, going backhand or going cross crease on Bobrovsky, setting up great plays that get good passes to move the goaltender laterally. Bobrovsky is, of course, on the older side. He is a 35-year-old goaltender. I don't want to get his age wrong, but he's somewhere around there. So moving laterally could be a challenge for a guy like Sergei Bobrovsky. So it would make a little bit of sense for him and for the goaltender to have the troubles with plays like that by the Edmonton Oilers that they're looking to set up. But yeah, the Oilers have been fantastic in this game. Of course, getting out to a 3-goal lead in this one. Now it is a 2-goal lead. Let's imagine this for a second here. Because I will be done with this podcast before this game ends. I just want to throw this out into the world, just in case it happens. I think that this could be the funniest way for this series to end. The Oilers have this 3-0 comeback. Everybody's talking like it's already happened, like they're already going to a Game 7. Imagine the Florida Panthers come back from a 3-0 deficit in this third period to win 4-3. I think that nobody could write a script better than that. I think that would be hilarious. Of course, I'm a little bit saying this, and that probably wouldn't be fun for me to happen because, of course, I do want this series to go to 7 games. I like to talk about hockey, and I know that having actual hockey to talk about instead of just off-season to talk about for as long as possible will make my job a whole lot easier. Although I am excited for this off-season to happen, I think fun things will happen in this one. But yeah, for this game that's going on right now, it is now still 3-1. I would, of course, let you guys know if there is a goal that pops up on my screen. But it is 15 minutes left in this game. It is going to be... this game is going to go down to an empty net. We'll see who is able to turn provider for... if the Florida Panthers are able to turn provider. Kind of a clean game. It's not too many penalties. Matthias Janmark slashing against Oliver Ekman-Larsson. In the first period, Eetu Luostarinen slashing against Dylan Holloway. Later in that period, you also have in the second period Matthias Janmark roughing against Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew Tkachuk roughing against Matthias Janmark. So both of them went. That's probably an incidental, two incidental minors that no penalties were given, or it was still 5-on-5. And then Connor McDavid a hook against Alexander Barkov in the second period. I would have liked to see how that happened. That seems pretty interesting, but this is the stat that's saying out to me. I'm looking at the breakdown here right now. Takeaway column. The Oilers have 14 takeaways to the Florida Panthers 3. That might explain the difference in this hockey game. That would probably explain the difference in this hockey game. 14-3 in takeaways is insane. The Oilers are playing some great defensive hockey. We talk about, and the giveaways are even. It's 11-11 giveaways. So the Edmonton Oilers are just taking the puck off of the Panthers' stick. I mean, it's not really giveaways. Forcing turnovers, very impressive from the Edmonton Oilers here. 14-3 in takeaways. We talk about the forecheck of the Florida Panthers so often and how overbearing it can be, and we are seeing that the Edmonton Oilers are able to kind of take that game and play it and turn it away. And how's it going, Alex? I hope you're enjoying the Game 6 going on between the Oilers and the Panthers from our home back in Chicago. But for the Edmonton Oilers, looking like they're going to Game 7 here. Looking like this series is going the distance when it looked like it was going to be a sweep from last Saturday. I thought the series was over just 6 days ago. And now we're looking at, as the Florida Panthers get a power play, it's a Derek Ryan minor penalty. Florida Panthers on the power play, only down by 2 in the third period. This could get a little bit interesting. So I'm excited to go. It's actually Derek Ryan high sticking against Nick Cousins is what the official call is. But I'm excited to get watching the rest of this game. That'll be it for this Friday edition of the GSMC Hockey Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you all for tuning in and supporting the GSMC Hockey Podcast in any way possible. Remember to like and subscribe to the GSMC Sports Network while you're at it. And if you did enjoy the podcast, you could follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook to get more sports updates from the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you all once again for all your support, and all of you guys have a wonderful evening, weekend, and night.
Let's go.